like to introduce you to Therese Turner-Jones, the IDB's General Manager of the Caribbean Country Group and Jamaica representative, to make some opening remarks. Therese, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kiran. So excited and wanting to wish happy Water Day to everyone, not just the 112 participants who are with us in this webinar, but also to all of Jamaica on this special day. Very happy to have Honorable Minister Pernell Charles Jr. with us, the Minister of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment, and Climate Change. And of course, the moderators and our special guest panelists. And I'm extremely proud of today's event because this thing was cooked up at least almost 2 years ago. Last year it had to be postponed, and here we are today. And I think what the team has put together is pretty impressive. And I'm so excited. As Kiran has mentioned, we're here to launch this exceptional book, which I just found out Laura actually wrote 45 years ago. Just think about that. Just stop and think about that. 45 years ago, Laura was prescient enough to write this book. And today we have children who will speak in Espanol, Spanish, in Braille. There'll be communications in Braille, as well as English, to tell us about the Talisman's experience about climate change whilst living on Goat Island, and his interesting journey as he goes on the hunt for water. And aren't we all on the hunt for water? And I must say, today's supplement in the newspaper on World Water Day had a plethora of super interesting details on what's happening in the water sector in this country. I want to commend all of the writers who put that information together. But I also want to draw your attention to another story, which was not in the supplement, from a community in St. Thomas, who are lamenting the fact that for 20 years they've not had piped water. So this is really why we're here too, because we know that there is uneven distribution of fresh water in this country, the land of wood and water. So I just want to remind everyone while we're here. Just to get back to this Talisman the goat. So it may be an environmental tale, but climate change and climate refugees are tough realities, as we know, for millions of people across the world. According to the UN Refugee Agency, hazards resulting from the increasing intensity and frequency of extreme weather events, such as abnormally heavy rainfall, prolonged droughts, desertification, environmental degradation, all of which we know all too well in a country and a region like the Caribbean, or sea level rise and cyclones already cause for of on average more than 20 million people leaving their homes to move to other areas in their countries or outside of their countries every single year. 20 million people having to migrate because of no access to water. Talisman La Cabra highlights these harsh realities, the importance of water for life, and the need for us to protect, preserve, and conserve our natural resources so that we can all enjoy and have use of this life-saving commodity, especially in these COVID times. I can't stress that more. It's 1 year into this pandemic. Just to share with you, last week in my neighborhood, the water was down for 2 days. Imagine those folks who don't have access to clean water in COVID, even today. Just because I'm shameless and I want to say what the IDB has been doing in the sector for the last 50 years. So Kiran and Evan, who are the specialists, water and sanitation specialists for the IDB in our region, have done a heck of a lot in recent times, but the IDB has been doing a lot of work with the Water Resources Authority for decades now, including working with them to update their Water Resources Development Master Plan, which is, as you know, will guide the allocation of the country's water uses, as well as whether they're for agriculture, for industrial or domestic consumers. And going back to that supplement, very interesting details on who consumes most of the water in this country. I learned something from that information today. We've also in the past been working on policy matters, working with the Office of the Utilities Regulation, OUR, helping them look at the need for adjusting tariffs, for example, along with other utilities in Jamaica. And so that ongoing support is really important because it's not just about making sure that everybody has access to water, but making sure that the utility itself has enough resources to deliver the water. And so the tariff information is very important. We've been also supporting wetlands conservation and management as part of our sustainability and climate change programming. And just this morning, we were in a meeting with the Aracabessa Foundation talking about what we can do to help scale up fish sanctuaries across this country. And in the context of that, we talked about our project on the Clarendon Blue Carbon Mangrove Restoration Project, one which I've walked through. And I must say, it's a part of Jamaica that took me back to my experience living in West Africa. I had never, ever imagined landscape in Jamaica can look like that. So this is an area where before there were thriving mangroves and now they're all dead. And so part of our project is to get that mangrove area restored, working with UE Sudeco. And part of that effort is basically to talk about the connection between water availability, access, flow, and the functioning and health of coastal ecosystems like mangroves and wetlands. Because we know that that not just as an important part of our coastal resilience, but a really important part of building up the ecosystem around the coast. So we're supporting watershed protection with the National Environmental and Planning Agency, that's NEPA, and the Forestry Department. And of course, I think one of our landmark projects, the Yala's Hope Watersheds Project, is quite well known already in Jamaica. So what are we proud of? I think we're proud of a lot. We're proud of how the government of Jamaica has actually partnered with us to work on not just water supply and sewage services, but also the concept and arrangement for rural water supply to retain universal water supply coverage throughout the country. And going back to that story about the St. Thomas community, it's really important that that gets fixed and that gets fixed quickly, because 20 years without pipe water makes no sense in an area where the Yala's watershed, of course, is located. Most of our investment support to Jamaica's water sector has been to the National Water Commission. And most of that work has really been to work on what's called non-revenue water. So how to get losses from water that's actually flowing through pipes to be not as significant as they are. And those interventions have really seen a lot of improvement in the efficiency and the reliability of NWC services throughout the area that it serves in Kingston metropolitan area, but also to improve its own financial sustainability. Of the work with NWC, yeah, most of that has been in the Kingston and the St. Andrew area, and to some extent the Kingston metropolitan area, although the water, drainage, and sewage system of Port Antonio was financed is also being financed by the current IDB loan. So our current work, as I just mentioned, is attending to non-revenue water, which we know is a huge problem affecting water utilities across this region, not just Jamaica. Water loss and inefficiencies of these utilities is sort of like a common feature that we see across the region. And the way to attack that is to look at leaks, inaccurate metering, billing, theft, which we know affects electricity especially, but also affects the water sector. So water losses represented by non-revenue water levels represent inefficiencies of water utilities operation and management, which if addressed can provide significant financial, economic, and of course environmental benefits, including addressing the impact of climate change. This ongoing effort by the NWC to address its non-revenue water problem is aiming to reduce water losses from approximately 60% of the water supply input volume in KSA to 30%. Now, imagine we're talking about reducing it from 60% to 30%. I think eventually you want to see it reduced to zero, but cutting it in half is already a major effort. This project, by the way, is in its 5th year, and we have achieved some good results. Notably, leaks have been reduced, district metered areas have been installed, and hydraulic model prepared. Customer meters have been installed in socially challenged areas, and non-revenue water is coming down. So it's currently around 40%, so we still have a way to go. There's much more that needs to be done. And I think Of course, it requires more awareness of these problems, but it also requires a lot more work across the entire country. So we know that in non-revenue water is also not just in the Kingston metropolitan areas, but in other parish towns. And we understand that NWC is expanding this work to include Portmore, for example. And so we really celebrate that and as we work with them. We're also assisting NWC and water utilities across the Caribbean with training on non-revenue water reduction and studying the financial impact, of course, of COVID-19 on our water utilities. Today, as we commemorate World Water Day, we acknowledge the ongoing efforts of all of the agencies that work in this area, the Water Resources Authority, NEPA, NWC, NIC, of course, the Ministry of Growth, MEGJC, I'm sure I'm going to miss some part of that acronym, the OUR, all of the parish councils, of course, civil society, many of whom are represented with us today. Just to mention a few who are involved in managing our water resources, assuring adequate supplies for healthy ecosystems, improving efficiency of water supply and wastewater management, and of course, to help and mitigate and adapt to the realities of climate change, which makes today's event a really beautiful one. I want to make a special congratulation, of course, to Laura and the children who you're going to hear from today because we've recorded their stories. On the publication of this very delightful book, which we encourage everyone to purchase as well as read and read to your children. We especially commend the children and encourage all of you to play our part in caring for our environment and natural resources to ensure that we have lots more water for the future. It's a precious resource. It can be life-saving for years to come, and we know we can't live without water. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce Minister Charles, who will be speaking to us next. He is presently the Minister of Housing, Urban Renewal, Environment, and Climate Change. He's no stranger to the water and environment sectors, having served previously as a cabinet minister with a portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, with responsibility for water and housing and infrastructure. An attorney at law, he's also a strong youth advocate. I don't know how much longer that's going to last, but Charles, I think you are a youth advocate still. I also want to say he's no stranger to working with the IDB. He's been a very important partner in lots of projects with us. So help me please welcome Minister Pernell Charles Jr. to the panel. Thank you so much, everyone.
But it is so important to participate in this event today, not only because as a Minister of Climate Change and Environment, I identify with the complexity of issues relating to our water security that are connected to how we treat with our environment, how we interact with our environment, and how we acknowledge the several increasing issues that flow from the impacts of climate change that are creating warmer spaces and much more frequent and intense activities, all of which can impact on our water security, in particular fresh water. I just want to say to Ms. Facey, what an amazing journey you created in this book. My daughter found the book actually in my room, and being the inquisitive youngster she is, she grabbed it and started to read it. She was immediately captivated by the fact that she could read in both English and Spanish. I didn't even know that she read Spanish so well, but she read through and she challenged herself to read every word in Spanish and to connect it with the words in English on the pages. And she said to me, "Daddy, I'm 11, but I want a talisman." I said, "You want a what?" So she now wants me to find a goat that is standing on 2 feet and has a pink and white shell. I've tried to explain to her this is not a real goat, but you have created an imagery of talisman, which really is captivating for youngsters. I must say, when I read the book yesterday and I dived into the preface of it, I immediately was taken by the remarks of Edna Manley. And just her reference to the ghost of the Keino being there, the dead trees standing and line from the world began, the strangest part of Jamaica that she had ever been in. I was taken at that point. I did not put the book down until I went through and found myself reading through the various interactions that Talisman had. I must tell you, Laura, that at the end of it all, um, two things stood out. One, as a government, we have to find ways of captivating the imagination of our people, like this book does, so they can connect and understand on a practical way how the interaction with the environment is impacting us all. But I think that this is a marvelous way of inviting our children to explore not only their imagination, but to get to know, to travel throughout history and to get to ask questions that, like my daughter asked me, Dad, what's a calabash? You know, what is it used for? And references to the biodiversity and to the various animals, and just highlighting along this journey towards the goal, which is our fresh water. So I found it to be an interesting and very effective mechanism, which I would encourage all persons on this call to purchase a copy, and perhaps more than one copy, so that we can continue to spread this message. Secondly, as I close, I must say what I also found interesting, and I know that I'm speaking more about the book than I am on the government issues relating to the water, but they're all connected. What I found interesting, Mrs. Facey, is the the tone, the voices that I placed on the various animals. So the crocodile had a very low undertone, but it was a female, an alto female in my mind. And when I went through, I found that all the different animals, the iguana had a very monotone kind of voice, and even in how my own brain assimilated the journey, I think that I I can imagine that all of our children will be creating their own fantasy world for Talisman. Um, Ultimately, as I close, I just want to say thanks to you for the effort that has been put into this. It is something which, even at the Ministry for Environment and Climate Change, we intend to do some competitions that will inspire people to develop their own kind of articulations, and to put that into a collection that we can have as a better mechanism of getting our messaging out to the community. So Talisman the Goat will definitely be one of the pieces of material that I will be able now to support and encourage persons to purchase as a means of inviting and introducing our youngsters to issues relating to our biodiversity and water security. I want to say thanks to you for that, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you very much, Minister Pernell. And I would like to welcome now Laura Facey, author and illustrator of Talisman the Goat book, Talisman La Cabra. Congratulations to you, Laura, for this book. And I'll let you welcome the young readers, and we're all looking forward to hearing this wonderful story.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Hello. Hello, I'm Laura Facey, and I must say I'm a bit in tears after all that Minister Charles said. It's it's wonderful to be heard. So I am Laura Facey, author and illustrator of Talisman the Goat, Talisman La Cabra, and I am accompanied by Talisman. He looks worried. He's thinking about water. So Talisman the Goat was published 45 years ago by Operation Friendship under the leadership of the late Annabella Ogden. I now happily present to you excerpts read in English, Braille, and Spanish by Riley Cooper, my granddaughter, by Kiran Lopez Moleon, by Destiny Morrison, Keino King, and Aidan Lopez Moleon. Over to the children.
Today's World Water Day. Water is precious. Every drop counts. Welcome to our virtual launch of Talisman the Goat on World Water Day 2021. This is the story of Talisman, a very unusual goat who leaves his home on Goat Island to go in search of fresh water. He traverses extraordinary landscapes to finally arrive at Freshwater Cave. There he encounters Alcus. But who is Alcus? This is my friend Talisman.
Talismán la cabra. Esta es la historia de Talismán, una cabra nada usual que abandona su hogar en Isla de Cabra para buscar agua dulce. Atraviesa paisajes extraordinarios para finalmente llegar a la cueva de agua dulce. Ahí se encuentra con Alcos. ¿Pero quién es Alcos?
Once there was a goat called Talisman. Talisman was not the usual kind of goat. He walked on 2 feet and wore a pink and white coat made of shells. He lived on Goat Island, a tiny hump of land in the sea not far from the mainland. This year the rains had not come and the freshwater spring had dried up. Talisman walked along the shore thinking what to do. It was early morning. The wind blew furiously and rattled the shells of his coat. He listened as the wind spoke to him. "Go to the mainland to Freshwater Cave that belonged to the ancient Tainos," said the wind.
Talismán de pronto se encontró rodeado de elevados y arqueados mangles. Eran altos y enredados, crecían en todas direcciones. ¿Dónde puedo encontrar la cueva de agua dulce?, preguntó Talismán. Los mangles resonaron moviendo sus raíces. Sigue los bordes de nuestros arcos hasta que llegues a los huecos profundos de la tierra donde viven los cangrejos de tierra. Talismán caminó bajo el cálido sol. Los caracoles de su traje sonaban suavemente.
Talisman was soon surrounded by high arched mangroves. They were tall and tangled and grew in every direction. "Where may I find Freshwater Cave?" asked Talisman. The mangroves echoed, shaking their roots. "Follow the edge of our arches until you come to deep holes in the earth where the land crabs live." Talisman tramped along in the warm sun. The shells of his costume rattled gently.
Talisman entered the bush, and there immediately in front of him, sunning itself on a twisted fallen tree, was the strangest creature he had ever seen. "Who are you? Where do you come from?" he asked. "I am Iguana, a lizard, and I have lived here all my life. I am normally shy, but I decided to help you today." "You are on the right path," answered Iguana.
All of a sudden there was a great crashing sound. Talisman was knocked off his feet, and as he fell onto dry crackling leaves, he realized he was in the midst of a herd of wild stomping hogs. He barely escaped their hoofs, shouted after them, "Where is the cave?" "Ask Calabash Tree," grunted the hogs as they vanished through the bush.
"Look, I have Talisman's calabashes beside me. Let's read." At a distance, Talisman could see green round calabashes growing from the branches of a tree. As he walked towards the tree, he remembered how he had once made a calabash into a water jug. Again, Talisman asked how to find freshwater cave. The leaves of the calabash tree whispered to follow the footprints of the wild Brahmin cows.
¿Dónde está la cueva de agua dulce?, repitió Talisman por octava vez. Ah, dijo Patú, el sabio búho, yo vivo en la cueva de agua dulce, pero Alcos, el espíritu del antiguo perro taino, que no puede ladrar y no tiene pelo, guarda el manantial. He venido desde muy lejos buscando agua, dijo Talisman. Bueno, respondió Patú, tendrás que pedirle permiso a Alcos, que es una criatura rara. Él puede convertirte en piedra si no estás contento contigo. Cuando baje la luna y antes de que el sol amanezca, te llevaré a la cueva.
Suddenly, coming from the dark, Talisman saw Alcos. He was a long, thin creature, the color of stone with black eyes. Alcos darted back and forth from one rock to another. Not even Patú had seen Alcos like this before. But Talisman understood his movements. Alcos was pleased. He had remembered the sound of rattling shells. His ancient Taino companions had always danced with shells around their necks. Alcos loved the sound of rattling shells.
Talisman drank fresh water from the spring. He was happy. He spent several days and nights in the cave. He had discovered a whole new world. Then he made 3 water jugs from calabashes, and one morning, at dawn, he began his journey home. Bye!
This is World Water Day. Think water, drink water, do not waste water.
It was a joy to work with the children. Thank you each and every one. I'm going to tell you a little about Talisman's territory. Goat Island, the creek, crocodile, the mangroves, iguana, and the wild hogs are all real. Nearly all the creatures and characters in my book are real. My husband and I lived among them and explored their land for many years when we were young. We paddled our canoe through vast lily fields when the rains fell, tramped through parched, cracked salinas in dry times, bathed in Crocodile's Creek at night, and explored caves, the lime kilns, and an old fort. I was often seen in the bush with my easel and papers flapping in the breeze. In the wild, the only creature I did not see face to face was iguana. Iguanas were thought to be extinct when we lived in Talisman's territory. However, in 1990, they were found to be alive. So with the idea of this new edition, it was natural to add iguana to the book. We still visit Talisman's territory from time to time. And I'm very happy to report that the creatures, plants, and animals are flourishing and relatively are undisturbed. The mangroves are thick, strong, and expanding. So are the crocodiles. Now I'd like to answer some questions from Jamaican school children. Tajay asks, are there other goats on Goat Island? Yes, there have been goats on Goat Island over the years, sometimes a lot, and sometimes a few. Michael asks, what caused the rain to stop falling? Many places have normal wet and dry times, as we do here in Jamaica, but sometimes the dry times go on too long. Trees help to produce rain. If we cut trees, we probably will get less rain. Shanil asks, was Talisman scared when he saw the crocodile, or were they friends? Normally, a crocodile and a goat would not be friends, but this is a special story with magical parts. Joshua asks, couldn't Talisman just use the seawater to drink? No, not many animals can drink seawater because of all the salt in it. Goats can't. It would make them very sick. Most of the animals that do drink salt water live in or near the sea, like seabirds or sea turtles. These animals have special glands to help them get rid of all the salt in the water. Now we have come to the end of this little part of the program, so I will take the opportunity to say a few thank yous. My special thanks to Alethea Rickham, who proposed the idea of this Spanish-English version of Talisman, who asked IDB for help, and who produced the video of the children reading seen here today. My special thanks to IDB for creating this extraordinary and important virtual launch about water, and for including my book. Thanks to the Hope Zoo, and last but not least, thanks to the Mill Press for publishing my book.
And I would like to continue now with the panel discussion, how water benefits our lives. And I will introduce the moderator of this panel, Alexandra Rickham. Alexandra, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kiran. It is so exciting to be a part of today's programming. I was brought up on the story of Talisman and probably didn't recognize how relevant it would be so many years later. Welcome to World Water Day 2021. Water is the lifeblood of our planet, without which human life would not be possible. Our bodies are made up of 60% of water. Our planet is made up of 71%. We all interact with water in many forms every day, whether it's cooking, drinking, rain, or going to the beach. It is also a resource which is heavily under threat due to human activity. Being able to simply turn on a tap to access water has made large sections of the world devalue this most precious of resources. Humans have polluted it with sewage and plastic, and we are now seeing the major effects of this on our very existence. Today, we have an amazing panel of experts who will tell us how water benefits our lives and why we should value it. Amongst our panel is Diana Macaulay. Diana is a Jamaican writer and environmental activist. She's a founding member, director, and chief executive of the Jamaica Environment Trust. Over the past 30 years, Diana has dedicated herself to a wide range of efforts to educate Jamaicans on the importance of the natural environment, as well as organizing campaigns to protect the island's special places, including Goat Island. Diana is also an award-winning writer. She has written 3 critically acclaimed novels. She has also received many awards for her environmental work, including a Bronze Musgrave Medal from the Institute of Jamaica, a Ripple Award from the Jamaica Institute of Environmental Professionals, and the Order of Distinction Officer Class from the Government of Jamaica in 2016. Welcome, Diana. We also have with us today Eleanor Jones. Eleanor is an international environmental risk and development professional. She's a passionate change agent, working for over 30 years in academia, applied research, and consulting. Mrs. Jones has applied her expertise at a local, regional, and global level. She has provided consultancies to several agencies, including the IDB, EU, World Bank, and the Caribbean Development Bank. She has championed environmental risk management as good business. Mrs. Jones has been widely recognized through several awards for her work in environmental risk management systems, including the Order of Distinction Officer Class from the Government of Jamaica in 2018, and a Bronze Musgrave Medal from the Institute of Jamaica for distinction in the field of science in 2017. And finally, last but not least, Mr. Evan Caetano. Mr. Caetano is a water and sanitation senior specialist with IDB, but has also occupied posts as natural resource management and environmental specialist for the bank. Currently, he oversees water supply improvement projects in Jamaica, Guyana, and Suriname. He is also a team leader for the ongoing Regional Strategic Action Plan for the water sector in the Caribbean to develop resilience and to the impacts of climate change, and is the focal point for IDB's Water and Sanitation Division for the Caribbean. Mr. Caetano is a Belize national and in his early career worked in Belize's protected areas planning and management. I think we can safely say Mr. Caetano is Mr. Water of the Caribbean region at the moment. Mr. Caetano, I'd love to kick off with you, first of all. I know that you have a special little thing that you're bringing into today's proceedings, especially because we're in such an artistic and celebratory mood. So if you could kick things off, I think you have a poem to say for us today.
Yes, actually, thank you so very much. And I'm truly appreciative of the opportunity to participate in this panel and today as World Water Day. Happy World Water Day. I did not want to be very heavy on this day because I think it should be one of celebration. But we do have issues in the water sector that we need to be aware of. So I have two parts of my presentation, if the moderator would allow and if time would allow. We have limited time. I have one section that I'm calling, Did You Know? So did you know that Earth is 29% land and 71% water? I guess you knew, somebody said that earlier in this session. So indeed, we have plenty of water on the planet. But where is this water? Did you know that most of Earth's water, about 96.5% of it, is salt water, all contained in the oceans, or most of it contained in the oceans? Do you know that less than 3% of Earth's water is fresh? So whereas we have lots of water, we have a relatively small amount that is fresh water that could be accessed for drinking water supplies. More than 68% of the planet's fresh water is largely inaccessible. They are locked up in glaciers, in ice caps, and permanent snow. Did you know that? Well, if you did not know that, now you know, etc. So did you know that 30 to 34% of all water supplied worldwide becomes non-revenue water? This is a statistic that was shared with us by Fluence Corporation and some researchers. So Anomi says so, the researcher says so. And just to give you some context, this is around 346 million cubic meters per day. And did you know that that amount of water is about 70% the average flow of the Niger River being the principal river in West Africa, or nearly 50% of the average flow of the Ganges River in India? That's the amount of water we're losing. By some of these researchers, they have shown that the lowest non-revenue waters, which is around 36 liters per capita per day, or per person per day, could be found in Australia. They have done a lot of work to reduce water losses. The Pacific Islands have the highest non-revenue water, around 211 liters per person per day that is lost. And for us in Latin America and the Caribbean, we are about 121 liters per person per day, more than 3 times that of Australia, which is the lowest. So if you did not know, now you know.
It's okay, go for it.
I could go for a poem.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's have the poem. I think everybody's excited to
So
have
I love this poem. It's a poem by John Knight. Water, water, everywhere. Everywhere? Whence come water? Sorry, whence come this water that we need for life? Where does it go when we flush it away? A shortage in some countries causes strife. Will it run out like coal and oil one day? For all resources, there is a price to pay. We all use water like it was for free. Just turn the tap. It's there for you and me. God touched the clouds and made the rain. From the rain, formed the sea, and from the sea, formed the clouds. To rise and cool and give us rain again. The rain provides the water for the crowds. When it evaporates, it goes back to the clouds. Each drop of water makes our lives secure, but every day we're using more and more. The planet Earth has water everywhere, liquid or a solid or a vapor, in the oceans, rivers, lakes, and in the air. Ice caps are on frozen lakes like paper. We scrape it off our windscreens with a scraper. Mountain streams, boiling steam, or freezing snow. A lolly ice? Thanks, very nice. It's all H2O. The water cycle keeps the water going, round and round. None's lost to outer space. Precipitation, raining, hailing, snowing, moves the water round from place to place, especially when a snowball hits your face. Streams and rushing rivers keep it all in motion. Then water falls down, waterfalls, and ends up in the ocean. Water, water everywhere for our daily needs. Turn the tap and use the river and the well. Don't pollute. Don't dam the spring that feeds. Without clean water, life on earth is hell. Clean water has no taste, no color, and no smell. Water, water everywhere. Please, please stop and think. Water, water everywhere, but not one drop to drink. Thank you.
I'd love to hear your insight, Mrs. Jones, on, and your thoughts on the water cycle and our global perspective and, where we are right now. And
thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, everybody. This is such an exhilarating afternoon. I'm almost lost for words to move ahead. Evan, that was a brilliant presentation, and I love that water everywhere, not a drop to drink. I've used it many times, and I remember the first time going to Guyana and thinking that. So that's just a wonderful thing for you to have shared. Also sharing, if I can just pick up, sharing about the fact that so much of our Earth surface is covered by water. And more recently, the OECS conference, they've begun to think about not small island developing states as much as large ocean states, because many of our small islands are surrounded by large ocean space, and our territorial areas in many instances is more ocean than it is land. So it really is a joy for bringing the conversation about water from so many different perspectives. Celebratory, as we heard. We have focused on the supply of water, potable water, water for drinking and for human consumption, and perhaps animals too. So I want to again congratulate Laura, just as everybody, because this is an exciting time. 45 years ago, Laura, you are prescient in a way, but I'm not sure that you are thinking of climate change as much as you were thinking of the seasonality of rain. So many of the issues that have been subtly presented are heightened today. And in many ways, they're top of the global agenda, if not fully on our national agenda. So Talisman's seemingly magical journey in search of this life-giving resource is triggered by a lack of rainfall, and which led to the drying up of springs. He lived on Goat Island, and in fact, 45 years ago, we were focused on our rainy season, our dry season. We have always characterized Jamaica's climate and associated water supply, except that at one time we did not have springs drying up the way they dry up now, because we had a better condition of our land surface, which protected that. So Talisman's journey brings him in touch with the reality of biodiversity in a relatively small corner of Jamaica. And I was fascinated to hear Laura talk about her early days of adventure in this area. And representative, however, this connection with biodiversity and water, representative of the interconnectedness of life and circumstance, the inclusiveness, because here we had an array. He encounters in his magical journey an array of biophysical characteristics: land and sea, mainland and island, wind and water. If you think back to the children's beautiful reading, mangroves and crocodiles, salt creek, freshwater cave, crabs and birds, iguana, wild hogs, the calabash tree, footprints of Brahmin cows, patu. What an array of life and interconnection of life, each one guiding Talisman, connecting, go and check that one, go and check that one, moving along. So a subtle description of the contact between the natural environment, the built, and the social environment. A wonderful, wonderful portrayal. Next to air, water is essential for life. And it's interesting that this World Water Day is celebrated at the beginning of spring. Yesterday, March 21st, was the vernal equinox. And even more interesting is that yesterday marked the International Day of Forests. And so there is a tremendous link. We talk about connectivity, a tremendous link between forests, of course, and water. And the International Day of Forests, the theme this year was forest restoration, or is forest restoration, a path to recovery and well-being. And we are talking about valuing water. So it's a reminder, the fact that we're dealing with water, we're dealing with forests in 2 days juxtaposed so closely. In the spring, the beginning of spring, we are reminded of rebirth, we are reminded of renewal and moving along. So water, and I wanted to just perhaps make 3 points in keeping with what we were told to do, just for us to focus on water and ecosystems, the hydrological cycle, and water and climate change and what is happening to us, and then to leave you with a little takeaway, a bit in terms of perhaps what you can do. So, as we have said, water is essential for life. We have heard about that. It supports all life on planet Earth. It connects and maintains all ecosystems. It propels plant growth, it accommodates, it houses species, it's a breeding ground, it provides nutrients. It's a significant aspect of natural systems. We can't live we'd have no life without water, as you have already heard. And that is connected, of course, with our hydrological cycle. And Evan, in his poem, spoke about the rain falling to the ground and then going back up into the clouds. So water cycles continually on the planet through several distinctive routes. And what is very important is for us to understand that as we disrupt any of those roots, we disturb the symbiotic relationships and we cause destruction of species, and also we cause destruction of sustainable flows of water. And regrettably, we are seeing a lot of that, and we don't want to focus on the problems, but we want to look at the solutions. What should we be doing? So what happens when rain falls? It falls, well, let's look back at the hydrological cycle. We have, let's start with the oceans and land. You have evaporation and transpiration. Then you have water vapor. We're not going to go into all of the detail, but you have condensation, and then at the upper levels, and then it will fall again. It moves through the atmosphere in different forms, as you heard in that delightful poem, solid, liquid, vapor, and then precipitation falls to the ground, either as rain or snow or sleet or whatever. And then what is very important for us in Jamaica, especially, is that once this rain falls, it's very necessary for us to facilitate some percolation into our groundwater levels, percolation into the soil, and retard the runoff. Now, what used to happen in days of yore when we had perhaps more rain falling in a more consistent way, but more importantly, when we had a surface that was covered with good vegetation, this rain, we would have optimal percolation. And once this water gets into the ground, it flows as what we call through flow, through the layers of the soil, and would eventually re-emerge as a spring and would feed our rivers, so that you would have rivers and springs flowing almost consistently. You wouldn't have the drying of the springs or the drying of the rivers, much of which we see today. And that is as a consequence of what we have done in terms of disturbing these natural roots and disturbing these natural flows. So forests and vegetation play a significant role in the hydrologic cycle, contributing to sustainable quality as well as sustainable quantity of our water resources. So tree cover retards runoff, and it directs water into the soil, as I said, for storage and transport, reducing floods, landslides, soil erosion. So
it would be great if we can, I know that Diana has done a lot of campaigning around our freshwater aquifers. It would be really great to get a bit of insight from her on the campaign side and also on the protection side of those aquifers. It would be great to hear your kind of view on that. And also
thank you for inviting me, first of all, and huge congratulations to Laura and the IDB for just a really new way of doing an event like this. I think it's my first multilingual book launch, so I think that's really, really great. And when I was thinking about what I would say today, so as Alexandra said, I have a very long history as a activist and a campaigner, and one of our biggest campaigns was on the Goat Islands, which at one point the government wanted to put a big transshipment port there. But one of the things I didn't know when I started this work was, I was taught in school, like most of us are, Jamaica's land of wood and water. I didn't know that most of our freshwater supplies reside underground, which Elena has just explained to you. And I came to think of it as a kind of water bank. I thought this was how we should start thinking about this incredible resource that we have that's under our feet. I mean, where I am in Kingston sits over a large aquifer underground, and we access that water sometimes directly through wells, or sometimes, as Ellen explained, because of the rivers and streams that rise from the water. And it's hard to pollute, not impossible, but harder to pollute than water that's open to the, on the surface. And it also doesn't evaporate as easily as water that's held in dams. And so what Elena said about it, we don't have to build anything. It's actually there for us, preserved for us, if we just make sure that the way that it gets replenished from the rain via the forest cover is maintained. And this was something I didn't know. And I didn't know the percentage for sure. And it's over 80%, close to 84% of Jamaica's fresh water comes from underground water. And I see my friend, Kathy Ellens, who is also a childhood friend, so is Laura, talking about geology. And it's really the geology that allows us to have aquifers, and it gives us this great benefit of water percolating through soil and limestone, filtering and being really clean underground. So I think we should start thinking about the water under our feet and our water bank. That's something that I think that a way of framing then the importance of Jamaica's water resource. This is not true everywhere in the world, so we're very fortunate. On the campaign side, and I do have this history of this other life as a novelist. And for a lot of years, I've done environmental work for 30 years. And I would say for the first 15 of those, half of that time, I stood up in front of so many audiences of all kinds. And I thought what was really important was for me to transmit facts. So I put a lot of effort into learning the facts and the science. But in the sort of second half of my environmental life, and more as my writing life started to take hold of me, I began to change my mind about that. And that's what fits in why I'm so happy to be here today with the story of Talisman the goat. Because I think stories are really what change our hearts. They touch our emotions. And I'm pretty sure everybody listening today to those children reading the story of Talisman the goat, whatever age you are, we're moved by it. In some ways, we felt something. And I've come to believe that these messages have to bring us to feeling things, engaging our care and our emotions. And that's the beginning of getting us to change how we act and how we behave. So we Jamaicans are extremely good at stories. We're good at performance. We're good at song. We're good at drama. We're good at you know, all kinds of performance stuff, skits, that kind of thing. And I really want to see more of this kind of thing where the problems that we face, the facts that we need to know are given to us in a way that engages our hearts instead of really always trying to engage our minds, you know, without it's, you know, if you're a scientist, you kind of get told, come on, you know, you have to be dispassionate and you have to just give the facts. Well, I'm arguing for us not to be so dispassionate because we are actually threatening our one and only home, not just Jamaica, the island, but the earth, the planet. And it's time for a little passion, I feel. So I think stories are really important. Stories that are, you know, aimed at children, give them characters that they care about, that make them ask some of the questions that we've seen coming back to us today. You know, why did this happen? Why did the rain stop falling? Why did he have to go to the cave? And also for adults who, you know, perhaps a bit block out some of the messages until it's couched in a story that we suddenly find ourselves caring about the characters and the place. So I guess I'll stop there. I'm so happy to see Laura's words and her absolutely stunning art in this wonderful book, which I too read 45 years ago.
No, well, I have to say, I just thank you, all three of you, so much, because I think you've given such a huge breadth to the fact that science and communication are so important, and that bringing the art into the science, you know, starting off with Mr. Caetano with, you know, giving us the statistics, but then also giving us the beauty of the poem, you know, and Eleanor breaking down the story and the hydrological cycle and how it reflects on it. It's that, you know, that's really exciting. And I think we're living in an exciting time where communication is becoming so key to like transmitting our scientific messages, which quite often are mistranslated or not really picked up by the general public. And talking of the general public, we have a few questions that have been coming in. So one of the questions we have here was actually got several parts to it. So it's, what are the ways in which we can value water, not only in terms of dollars and cents? How can our young people appreciate and value that fresh water? And I'm thinking more in a spiritual and emotional value, it says, so linked to the biodiversity expressed in the book. What are the messages for our youth? You know, so what would you like to get out there as a key message for our youth and in terms of that value piece?
Well, I would say that, you know, the thing that we have to get people to understand, that when you use the word value, it unfortunately tends to take us to dollars and cents. So when I think about environmental messaging, what I want to get people to stop doing is wasting stuff. You know, so let's not waste any of our water. And we all, as water consumers, waste water, this valuable resource that many people don't have enough of. We are inclined to waste it. You can waste it through lack of care, through leaks, through just not paying attention to how we use it. So for me, it starts with paying attention, actually understanding where the natural resources that we use, sometimes without thought, do come from. So I like to tell the Water Commission that they're in distribution, but I am in supply, right? And they're not going to have anything to distribute if they don't start looking after forests and the restoration of the aquifers and that kind of thing. Restoration of our rivers. We treat our rivers in Jamaica in a really awful way. So we need to, we're supposed to, land of wood and water, we're supposed to love them. So I guess I start with waste, and I start with understanding how it is we protect these resources and move from there.
Okay, and Mrs. Jones?
I think particularly we're working with children in school. Now that we've had the pandemic, they've had to be washing hands and so on. I think it's with all, maybe carrying it a little further, but building on Diana's point, what's in it for me? How does this affect me directly? What am I going to lose if I don't take care of this? And the business of wasting water is a real one. So, we talk about conservation, we talk about the leaks, but remember that some of this water that we're losing in terms of resources, it's all about distribution, and we can get it going. There are many areas across Jamaica that are starved for water. And some of these areas have rivers, a big upper Riam in a watershed. When you go through those communities, they have no water. They have to go and travel long distances sometimes to pull the water up from a spring that may be in a major depression. So it's what's in it for me. How is it going to affect me? I think is important. And I like to tie water, just as I tie all aspects of the environment, to health. And health is a hook that I think cuts across just about everybody. So water and health.
And Mr. Cayetano, if you could tell us, what are your thoughts on the inclusivity of, what's the value of water and it's our binding factor.
I have a takeaway from the reading, and that is, think water, drink water, do not waste water. That is so true. And in the poem, it says, we all use water like it was for free. I like to say that the only free water is the water falling from the sky. For every other use of water, there's a cost. If people want to have water for themselves with the rain, they have to at least invest in a bucket to catch the water. Much less if you have to distribute that water to a city, the investment that has to go into it. So it is not free. Maybe the water itself, as it falls from the sky, and the whole hydrological cycle, that beautiful mystique and mysterious concept that keep all life alive. As NWC's slogan says, water is life. So it is indeed, we are custodians, and we have to behave in a way that we provide for maximum efficiency of water distribution and water use, and recognizing that indeed, unless we have the natural cycle able to perform its functions, which includes our forests, our soils, and so on, unless all of that is intact. So we need all the players, all the different agencies. These institutions that we have in government are not there just to be there. They're there for a function, and each one of them provide that critical role. Water Resources Authority need to have a good understanding of the water budget, where the water is coming from, where it is. They need to manage and how it is allocated for different use, agriculture, industry, to human populations. NEPA need to ensure that we protect the environment and keep all these parts in place as well. So there has to be this coordination by all entities, and I think civil society and what we're doing today as even in a fun space could demonstrate the seriousness of the issue that we're facing.
Perfect takeaway. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to all of the panelists, and to IDB as well, and for all of the great questions that we had sent in. And, it's been a really great session. And I just want to say thank you to Laura as well, because without Talisman, we all wouldn't be here today.